to make this really useful rack. The idea is rooted in the fact that many woodworkers start out with a few miscellaneous clamps. You may have a couple of F-clamps, some pipe clamps, maybe one or two pistol grip clamps. And in order to store all these clamps in their various types and sizes, you need a rack that can be adjusted to fit and that can easily change as your clamp collection grows down the road. This rack is designed to evolve with you. It can hold up to 40 clamps of all shapes and sizes. It'll probably be the only rack you ever need. Below this video, I'll link to some downloadable plans with easy-to-follow step-by-step instructions. Look for it in the video description or pinned to the top of the comment section. Now here's some lessons I learned while I was making it. All the brackets required angled cuts to create triangles. Now I usually cut triangles on the bandsaw, but that leaves a rough edge that needs a lot of sanding. And since I had 12 of these to make, it just made sense to come up with a better way. So I took about 5 minutes to make a simple jig for the table saw. I admit sometimes it's hard to take a break from the project itself to make a separate little project like a jig. You may feel like it stalls your momentum, but it almost always pays off in the end, whether you're building something like this or a piece of fine furniture. Even if the jig won't save you time, even if it's just for one cut in one workpiece, if it'll make the job more accurate or more importantly safer, you should totally do it. That is a lesson that will serve you well in this craft. Here's another simple jig I made for this project. The brackets have little hooks on the back. You want that to slip over a plywood rail inside the rack carcass. Now if the space within the hook is too tight, the bracket won't work well. So I took a piece of plywood that was equal in thickness to my rail, I clamped it in a vise, and I held my project parts in place over the end as I clamped on a stop block. Now I can use this to assemble all 10 brackets with the proper gap inside the hooks. If I hadn't taken a couple extra minutes to make this simple assembly jig, I know half my brackets wouldn't have fit properly. Sometimes assembly jigs are as important as cutting jigs. Work smarter, not harder. By the way, I know some of you are going to ask why I designed this with a hooking bracket rather than a simple French cleat bracket. I think a French cleat would make the bracket too easy to just knock off when you're removing clamps, which could cause them to just fall down on the floor. I think this design is much more secure. Here's another challenge I had to overcome that was unique to the plywood I was using. I sometimes buy pre-finished plywood for shop cabinets. It's great for that, but it's not so good for projects like this because I need good, strong glue joints, and glue won't stick to pre-finished surfaces. So what I did was I set up a 3/4 inch straight bit in my router table, just high enough to skim off the finish layer wherever I needed to remove it for a glue joint. A dado set would have worked in my table saw, but I needed my table saw free for cutting out project parts, and it was really handy to just walk over to the router table whenever I needed it. These rabbets were really shallow, perhaps a 32nd of an inch, but that may be enough to throw off a critical measurement. In fact, the thickness of the plywood itself can throw things off too. I design in SketchUp and I assume all of my materials 3/4 of an inch thick, but plywood rarely is. And that teaches another important lesson. Never cut all of your parts from a cut list at the beginning of a project. Cut them out only as you need them, so you can make adjustments to compensate for things like joinery or material thickness or small mistakes that you may have made in assembly. Overall, this build took 1 day and it only required half a sheet of plywood. I'd estimate the cost around 30 to 40 bucks. Not bad for something this versatile and that'll hold up to 40 clamps. Like I said, it may be the only clamp rack you ever need. Grab the plans at the link below and build one for your shop. Now here's something else that'll really up your woodworking game. It's just a couple of cuts. Your ears will be fine, right? They will be if you have your IsoTunes Bluetooth earbuds in, because you'd already have your ANSI certified hearing protection on because you're listening to your favorite music and podcasts. And you're supporting a small family business at the same time. Please use the link below this video to learn more and to show them you support what we do as well. दोस्तों ब्लैक